guys, it's Kevin, my review for the live-action remake of Dumbo. So what this remake is essentially about is we center on the Medici circus, and this is sort of the struggling circus that's really trying to get off the ground, and one day they basically are given all of these elephants to hopefully help become the main attraction of the circus, and the one that sticks out the most, of course, is Dumbo, this oversized, this elephant that has very oversized ears, and at first he is very much mocked at by the audience and things like that, but this family tries to come together and help him find the ability to fly and things like that, and that's really all I'm going to say. So, Dumbo overall, look, I am not a huge fan of Disney trying to go out of their way and just remaking every single animated movie they've done. Here's the thing, though, most of them have been successes, at least the three most recent, Cinderella, Jungle Book, and Beauty and the Beast, respectively. I've enjoyed all of those. Dumbo, on the other hand, while I did know those stories, Dumbo is not really one that really has that much nostalgia to me. It's not really tied to me in that way. I just didn't really watch it that much as a kid, but I recently did sit down and rewatch it, and honestly, rewatching it, there's a lot you can still do with this story, and I was excited to see what they were going to do here. The idea that you're taking a 60-minute cartoon and making it almost 2 hours was actually really intriguing to me, and the fact that they were kind of turning it on its head, they were going to focus more on the humans, it just seemed like it was going to be a completely different vision, and that's something I was kind of excited for, and I was hoping that it could have been something really new, maybe really different, and it didn't just feel like an unnecessary remake, and it honestly kind of sucked. Dumbo, look, this is not a terrible movie in any way, but there is definitely a lot wrong with this film for sure that I really do think could have been a lot better had they tapped into certain things. But we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. Look, I'll say this right now, the cast for the most part does do a really good job. This is a very talented cast of individuals. Let's first talk about Colin Farrell as the character of Holt Farrier. The character we'll get to a little bit later, but Farrell does do a fairly good job here. I was overall impressed by what he did in this film. He is such a fantastic actor, and even though given the role he doesn't really have a ton to do, he tries to bring as much life to this film as possible, and I do think he did a good job for sure. There are definitely scenes with him where it felt like there was a little bit more to them, and I think a lesser actor, this role could have been absolutely terrible, but Farrell did heighten the role slightly. Again, we'll get to the character, but I do think he did the best he could. However, easily the best performance of this entire movie is Danny DeVito as Max Medici, who I thought was fantastic here. Everyone else in this film, they have this sort of very realistic sort of approach to them. Medici, on the other hand, DeVito's character is just so much fun to watch. This is such a wacky and just weird character, and DeVito just kills it in this role. There are so many lines that were very obviously ad-libbed, but it really did benefit his role overall. I really enjoy what he did here, and I kind of wish he was the center of the movie, because whenever he came on screen, the movie suddenly felt like it had more life to it. It felt like there was more going on in his side of the story, and I really did like him here a lot. He's in the movie more than I expected, but again, he's not the central focus, and I really do wish he was, because I thought he really was pretty spectacular here. As far as the rest of the cast goes, I will say Eva Green does a really good job for what she had. Her and Colin Farrell, there definitely are scenes with them where they have really good chemistry for sure, and I do like what she brought to the film overall. Again, we'll get to her character in a little bit. However, everyone else here, no. Honestly, not doing it for me. Michael Keaton, very good actor, really. Very talented actor. I really haven't ever seen him give a bad performance, which is why this was so surprising to me, because, wow, I mean, Keaton really dropped the ball on this role. I don't know what happened here exactly, but when he's playing V.A. Vargas, everything about this character feels like a cartoon. It doesn't feel like a realized character. This is just the corporate piece of shit that seems to want money. He seems to have his own sort of agenda. There are times in this movie where he is like waffling between different accents. He doesn't seem to know what he really wants to do, what he really wants to do with this character, what mannerisms he wants this character to have. Just everything completely fell flat. And I don't know if it was the way he was directed or if Keaton just simply did not know what to do with this role, but this was extremely disappointing. Especially as the role goes on, he honestly does get worse and worse, and I was very disappointed with him for sure. And unfortunately, the performances don't get better there. The kids in this film, I really didn't think were very good at all. I will say the son wasn't really all that bad, but he really didn't have that much to do. Finley Hobbins, I wish he had a little more to do, and that's mainly because of how terrible Nico Parker was. I mean, wow. I've talked about before how, there are certain child performances this year that have been from certain actors or actresses. It's been their children and they haven't felt like, just, oh, they're trying to exploit their children and they're trying to make them become as successful. This is the exact opposite of everything that I was saying, because for me, she was probably the worst performance in the entire movie. She's so just stilted and robotic. Every single line of dialogue is pretty much just like this, and everything she says, she has this very sort of robotic, mechanical tone to her, and never really feels like she has an established character. And just overall, after a while, it just gets so monotonous, and it's very hard to buy into this character that rarely displays any emotion whatsoever. She may crack a smile or something, but even that just feels so manufactured and fake. And I don't know if it just is an example of how bad Nico Parker is in this movie, but she truly was terrible here. I was so surprised by how bad she was in this film. She didn't look that bad in the trailers, but she is horrendous here, and I really don't want to see her again, and I was very disappointed by her. Overall, the cast here, while a lot of them do try their best, they really don't deliver as much as you may want them to. But now we got to get to the directing here, which honestly is extremely disappointing. Tim Burton, look, I think at once he was a real visionary. He had a real eye when it comes to doing very just different and audacious sort of storytelling. He really did have an eye when it comes to, what he was trying to do. He was very much a different sort of director. Nowadays, though, I think this film kind of shows that he's very much lost his touch, and unfortunately, Dumbo is not a film that gives you that same sort of vibe that his old films used to have. This just feels like a director going through the motions. It seemed like Tim Burton didn't really know what he wanted this movie to be. Things do feel dark, but they don't feel dark enough. Things may feel wacky, but they don't feel wacky enough, and I think that's the biggest problem. Burton's directing here just feels very stale. It feels like you're watching a creator who once had it, but he's just not in the game anymore. He doesn't seem to have it in his skin, and it's just very disappointing to see. I hate seeing directors decline, but this film very much shows that Burton is in decline, mainly because, again, he doesn't really seem to have any sort of vision with this film, and I do think it really did hurt it overall. But the writing is really where this film falls apart. And look, I should have been more worried. I really should have, because I know a lot of people were talking about how Kruger was the writer here, and anyone who said that he was the wrong choice is absolutely correct, honestly. I think all of that was very much warranted because his writing here is pretty terrible. I mean, there are so many things wrong with this screenplay. The biggest thing that I think he does wrong, though, is that, again, this is trying to be its own thing. And I was trying to look at it as that. I wasn't looking at this as just a remake of Dumbo, because it's trying to be its own thing. It's trying to do something different. The problem is the film doesn't give you anything to latch onto in that field. All the human characters, forget it. They're almost nothing, especially when it comes to the main family here. Colin Farrell, like I said, as good as he is in the movie, his performance notwithstanding, the character of Holt Ferrier is so bland. I mean, every so often, you know, we hear very early on in the movie that, like, he lost his arm from, like, World War I and things like that. And that his wife died, but all of that just feels like an afterthought. All of that just feels like a reason for us to care about this character and his two kids, and other than that, there's nothing to care about here. This is just, he's a guy, he's trying to help the circus, I guess. He doesn't really have much of an arc at all, and the kids also just, there's nothing to them. They don't really play an integral role here, and I kind of wish they did, because look, they're supposed to be replacing Timothy Mouse. They're supposed to be playing that role that Timothy played in the original film, and they don't even really have that much to do here. They help Dumbo fly, but that's kind of it. That's all they kind of do in this movie. They replace Timothy, but they also kind of replace the racist crows, and I really didn't feel much towards this family at all. And again, the problem is the family is really at the center of everything. They are the main characters in this movie. They're the people you're supposed to care for, and the movie gives you really no reason to care for them, and I think that was a huge problem here, and I was very disappointed when it comes to that. But the other characters as well, there's really nothing to them. Eva Green is pretty much wasted here. She goes through this character shift, and it doesn't feel natural. It feels like the only reason that she did is because the film just says so. There's really no reason for this character to go through this shift. And look, there are moments between her and Colin Farrell that hint at a better movie, but there's so few and far between that you have no reason to care about them either. You're clearly supposed to be rooting for them as like a romantic couple or something like that, and not at any point in this movie do you feel anything towards them, and I think that was definitely a big mistake. And like I said, Danny DeVito's character, Max Medici, even him, as much as I enjoyed him in this movie, which like I said, when he's on screen, the film suddenly feels a lot more fun. It feels more vibrant. It feels more investing in things like that. Even at that, his character is really not that well realized. He just is a circus manager, and that's kind of all he is. He runs the circus. He's trying to make things go as well as they can. He's constantly stressed out. He has like this pet monkey and things like that, and that's kind of all there is to his character. And again, I appreciated it because of DeVito's delivery, but I can't deny that there still really isn't much to the character. There still isn't really much that Kruger does to get me to latch onto this character, and that really did disappoint for sure. Just all the characters just fall completely flat, and again, when the movie is centered around them, it really doesn't help. Also, Dumbo, the character of the movie, the title character, isn't really in this movie as much as you may think, and I think that's also a big mistake. Dumbo is very much pushed to the background, and again, I don't have a problem with that. They're trying to focus more on the human characters, but when the human characters aren't delivering, you would think they try to focus on Dumbo more, but Dumbo is nothing more than just a plot device in this movie. Dumbo is really just here because the script tells him to be, tells for Dumbo to be here, and Dumbo never really feels that he has any real characterization. It doesn't really feel like Dumbo really goes through that much of anything. The only thing I will give the film is that it does kind of explore the animal cruelty stuff a little bit more than the original did, but even that doesn't really feel like it's tapped into as much as it should have, and again, it is a real detriment to the story overall. Also, some of the dialogue in this movie is absolutely horrendous. I know people have talked about this before, but there's literally a scene where Colin Farrell goes up to Dumbo and he touches him, he slaps his ass, and he calls him Big D. I don't know what that's doing there, but it makes absolutely no sense. But the one that is the most egregious, I think, involves this announcer. And if you guys watch wrestling and things like that, which I personally don't, but there is a certain catchphrase that you hear whenever the announcer is about to, when the match is about to start and things like that. And yeah, they tried to do something like that in this movie, and every single time it fell so flat. I legitimately did not know what I was watching. I don't know what that's doing here, but it has to be one of the worst lines I've heard all year. Again, I don't hate this movie or anything, but it easily is one of the worst things about the entire film. There are a lot of really bad dialogue exchanges, and that's easily, I think, the worst of them for sure. But the other big problem I have with Dumbo is that for a film that's trying to be something different, it's really not. It hits a lot of similar beats to the original, and not in a good way. A lot of them feel very obnoxious. There is a very out of place scene involving the classic pink elephants from the movie, and really the only reason it's here is to make you go, oh, look at that, it's the pink elephant scene. Yeah, remember that scene in the original? Remember how much you loved that in the original? Wasn't that just such a great scene? Yeah, let's have it here for some reason. It's so out of place. I don't know what it's doing here, and again, for a film that's trying to be something different, it has no business being in here. It's not the only instance of it, though. They also have the baby mime sequence in here for some reason, and it's absolutely nothing. And the original was a really sweet, heartbreaking scene, with, you know, Dumbo's mom singing to him, and here, it's just some random lady singing, and it means absolutely nothing, and it very well could have just been cut from the film entirely. But again, there's so much wrong with this film. It's such a mess narratively, and I think in general that's really where everything does fall apart for me. I think just it's an absolute mess. It doesn't make a lot of sense narrative-wise. The villain is very weak and things like that. There's just a lot wrong with this film from a screenplay perspective. But in terms of cinematography, I will say the visuals in this film are gorgeous. There are a lot of really great visual flair here, especially when it comes to the look of Dumbo. I mean, Dumbo, that's probably the most tangible thing in this entire movie. You really do feel like you can reach out and touch Dumbo and things like that when he's flying. It's just spectacular to look at. The sets, though, on the other hand, kind of look kind of bland. They don't really have much of a visual flair to them, and I think that's something that was missing. And again, oddly enough, the only time where the movie feels like it has a real, like, visual pop is when Danny DeVito is on screen. And again, I don't know if it's just Danny DeVito lights up the entire film, but it does very much feel the way. There are many points in the film where you'll just have like Colin, Farrell, and Michael Keaton talking, and where they're standing, it doesn't look real. And I do think it does hurt the film for sure. I think the film needed more of a visual style, and to me, it seemed like that's the main reason why they got Tim Burton, because they wanted him to do something, and it didn't really seem like, again, he had much of an idea of what he wanted to do visually either, and I think that's just a big hindrance to the film, just like a lot of things are. I will say the score by Danny Elfman is really great. I really did enjoy it a lot. There's a lot of great cues and things like that. That's similar, that unlike the pink elephant scene, they don't feel on the nose. They don't feel in your face. Danny Elfman did a really good job with the score, and it's a much better score than the movie deserves, honestly. It's a really good score, and I enjoy it a lot. The editing to this film is also way too long. The first 30 minutes, I was honestly really bored. I thought they were extremely boring. Dumbo learning to fly, it happens very early on in this movie, and the rest of it is basically kind of feels like a sequel, and that's another big problem with the movie. It really does feel like two different movies that they kind of wanted to do in a potential Dumbo 2, but that's probably not going to happen. Just overall, this film is a huge mess. There is so much that I think is really holding it back from being something even close to good. There's a lot of wasted talent. There are definitely scenes, like I said, the stuff between Colin Farrell and Eva Green, that hint at a better movie. There is a good animal cruelty message in there, but it never really feels like it's at the forefront. It never really feels like it's all that focused. It just feels like it's there just so there's something to take away from this movie, because at the end of the day, this really doesn't feel like anything that much other than just a needless cash grab. And for a film that was aimed to be something different, that promoted itself as something different, that is extremely disappointing. That really did piss me off overall. I wanted something a lot more from this film, and it really did let me down. And honestly, this makes me that much more nervous for the other Disney live-action films this year. If this is any constellation of what we're going to get, moving forward, I am definitely very worried for sure. Overall, though, this film was highly disappointing, and I'm definitely going to give Dumbo overall a C-. But over, guys, in my review of Dumbo. Let me know what you guys saw this movie overall, left your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.